The hall was quiet, too quiet for a wedding. The girl sat with her hands trembling on her lap. Her dress was simple, her veil thin, and her eyes wet with tears. The villagers looked on, whispering in low voices. They saw her sadness, but no one spoke. The old man beside her was calm. His face showed years of life, lines carved deep into his skin. His eyes, however, were steady, watching her with a softness that few noticed. The ceremony began. Words were spoken, promises exchanged, and hands joined. The girl's tears fell harder. She did not smile. She did not look at him. She only thought of the life she had lost, the dreams she could no longer reach. Her father had forced this marriage. He had debts. The old man had wealth. She had no choice. The vows were said. The rings placed. The hall grew silent as they became husband and wife. The girl felt her chest tighten. She felt trapped. To her, the man beside her was not a husband. He was a stranger. He was old. She could not understand why fate had tied her to him. Her friends watched, unable to comfort her. The feast that followed was quiet. She barely touched her food. The old man spoke kindly to her, but she gave no answer. He did not scold her. He only nodded and let her be. As night fell, the villagers left. The girl followed the old man to his home. It was a small wooden house, simple yet clean. The lamps glowed warmly. The girl walked in with heavy steps, her heart still weeping. She sat by the window, staring at the moon. The old man did not approach her. He prepared tea, set it on the table, and said softly, "You may rest." His voice was calm, patient. She looked at him for the first time. His face was tired, but his eyes carried no anger. She lowered her gaze again, tears filling her eyes. That night, the silence grew heavy between them. She waited for him to claim his rights as a husband, but he never did. He slept on the floor, giving her the bed. She lay awake, confused. Why had he not touched her? Why did he show kindness when she expected demand? The questions stayed with her, as her tears slowly dried in the darkness. Morning came slowly. The girl opened her eyes to soft light slipping through the wooden shutters. She sat up, startled, realizing she had slept in the bed alone. The old man was already awake. She saw him outside the window, sweeping the small courtyard, his movements steady and calm. She rose quietly, still unsure of him. He came in soon after, carrying fresh water. He placed it on the table and spoke gently. "There is food in the kitchen. Eat when you wish." His words were simple. He did not ask her to cook. He did not order her to serve. He gave her space. The girl ate a little bread in silence. He poured tea and drank slowly. The house was quiet, except for the sound of the kettle and the birds outside. She studied him in secret. His beard was silver, his back slightly bent, but his eyes were steady, and his hands strong. He noticed her gaze, but did not hold it. Instead, he asked, "Do you wish to visit your family today?" She shook her head. Her father had sold her future. She had no wish to see him again. The day passed with stillness. The man spent his time reading old books and tending to his small garden. The girl remained indoors, folding her hands in her lap, staring out of the window at the distant fields. Her heart was heavy. She longed for freedom, for a life with laughter, but found only silence. When night came, she expected fear. Yet again, the man gave her the bed and slept on the floor. She whispered into the darkness, asking herself why he treated her with such patience. He never raised his voice, never reached for her. It was as if he carried a secret, a reason for his quiet restraint. The days that followed were the same. The girl cried less, though her heart remained unsettled. She began to notice small things, the way he placed her food first before eating, the way he left the best blanket for her, the way he never asked for more than her presence. Still, she could not bring herself to speak to him. She was young, afraid, and uncertain. Each night, the silence grew deeper. She lay awake, listening to his slow breathing on the floor. Something about him was different from what she had imagined. He was not cruel, he was not harsh, but he was still a stranger, and she could not trust him yet. The girl held her sorrow close, unaware that the old man carried his own. One evening, as the sky grew golden, the girl stood at the doorway, watching. The old man was in the garden, planting herbs. His hands worked gently, pressing the soil around the roots. She noticed the patience in his movements, the care he gave to each small plant. For the first time, she stepped outside without fear. She walked slowly to the edge of the garden. He looked up, surprised but not startled. He gave her a faint smile and offered her the small pot of seeds. "Would you like to plant one?" She hesitated, her heart beating fast. No one had asked her before. No one had given her choice. Slowly, she took the pot and knelt down beside him. Her hands shook as she placed the seed into the soil. He guided her gently, his voice soft. "Cover it lightly, let the earth breathe." She followed his words, and together they pressed the soil closed. The moment was quiet, but it stayed with her. For the first time since the wedding, she felt a little peace. She looked at him, and he nodded, saying nothing more. They worked in silence until the sun dipped low. That night, she thought of the seed. She thought of his patience. She wondered again why he had not touched her, why he treated her with respect when she had expected only control. Her mind grew restless, but her heart softened slightly. In the days that followed, she found herself walking into the garden more often. Sometimes she watered the plants, sometimes she only watched. He never forced her, never asked her to do more, but she began to notice how he placed fresh flowers on the table, how he shared his fruit with her, always giving her the sweetest piece. Her tears grew less frequent. Though her heart still carried sorrow, she began to feel the warmth of small kindnesses. She began to wonder if perhaps there was something more behind his silence, a secret he carried within. It was late at night when she finally asked. The old man sat with a candle, staring at a faded photograph. His face was still, his hands trembling slightly as he held it. The girl, curious, whispered softly, "Who is that?" He looked at her with quiet eyes, then turned the photograph toward her. A young woman smiled from the picture, her eyes bright, her hair tied neatly. The girl saw love in the photo, a love long gone. "She was my wife," he said, his voice low. "She died many years ago." The girl felt her heart soften. She had not expected such honesty. She had not expected pain behind his silence. He placed the photo gently back into a small wooden box. "Since then, I have lived alone. I thought my life would end in solitude. But your father asked me to marry you." He paused. "I did not wish for this, but I could not refuse." The girl's eyes widened. For the first time, she saw him not as a stranger, but as a man who had loved and lost. She felt her tears rise again, but they were different tears. She understood a little of his sorrow. He looked at her carefully and spoke. "I will not harm you. I will not ask for what you cannot give. I only wished to give you a home, food, and safety." His voice trembled with sincerity. The girl sat silently, her heart torn. She had hated him, feared him, but now she saw a man carrying grief as heavy as her own. She whispered, almost too softly, "Thank you." That night, she cried again, but her tears were gentler. The days moved slowly, but something inside the girl began to change. She no longer sat alone by the window. Instead, she found herself stepping into the garden, her hands reaching for the watering jug. The plants she had helped sow were beginning to sprout, and she wanted to see them grow. The old man often watched her, saying little. Sometimes he offered advice on how much water each plant needed. Sometimes he only smiled quietly, letting her move at her own pace. His patience began to soften the walls around her heart. One evening, as she poured water into the soil, she glanced up and found him watching. For the first time, she smiled. It was small, uncertain, but real. He did not speak, but his eyes grew warm. They began to share more moments. She prepared tea for him, shyly placing the cup before him. He thanked her in his quiet voice. He told her small stories of the village, of the seasons, of the birds that nested in the trees. She listened, not speaking much, but listening. Slowly, the silence between them grew less heavy. When she fell ill one morning, he was quick to notice. He brought her soup, sat by her side, and stayed until her fever passed. He never left her unattended. His care was gentle, never demanding. She realized that he treated her with dignity, something she had not expected from this marriage. The girl began to see him in a new light. He was old, yes, and his body carried the weight of years. But his heart was steady, and his kindness was genuine. She thought of her father, who had sold her into this marriage. She thought of the life she might have had, yet she also thought of the man who slept on the floor each night, never once asking for more than her comfort. One evening, as they sat together in the garden, he spoke softly. "I do not know how long I have left in this life, but I wish for you to live without fear. That is all I ask." The girl's throat tightened. She had married him with tears, but now she felt something new. Respect, safety, perhaps, in time, even affection. That night, as she lay in the bed, she whispered into the darkness, "Thank you." She knew he heard her, though he did not reply. The truth came on a quiet afternoon. The girl was cleaning the study when she found a faded leather journal tucked behind a row of books. Curiosity drew her to it. She opened the pages and saw handwriting, careful but worn. Inside were notes, letters, and thoughts. They spoke of loneliness, of regret, of the pain of losing his wife. But there was more. The journal revealed that the old man had been sick for years. His heart was weak. He had agreed to marry not for wealth, not for power, but so that he would not leave this world alone. Her breath caught. She turned to him, the journal trembling in her hands. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. He looked at her with quiet eyes, then lowered his gaze. "Because I did not want your pity. I only wanted to give you a safe place, a roof, food, and respect. If I die tomorrow, I want you to remember that you were cared for, not abandoned." The girl felt her eyes burn with tears. She had thought herself trapped. She had thought he had stolen her freedom. But now she understood. He had carried her sorrow along with his own. He had given her kindness when he could have demanded obedience. She placed the journal down and walked to him. Her voice trembled. "You are not alone." The old man's eyes widened. For the first time, she placed her hand over his. His hands were rough, lined with age, but warm. A silence passed between them, not heavy, but full. From that day, the girl treated him differently. She spoke to him more. She sat beside him as he read, sometimes asking him to share stories. She helped him with the garden, smiling when the flowers began to bloom. She cooked for him, and he thanked her each time, as if she had given him a gift. The old man's health weakened with time, but his eyes always grew bright when she was near. The girl, once full of tears, now felt strength in caring for him. She had entered the marriage with sorrow, but she was finding meaning in it. Time passed gently, like the turning of quiet seasons. The girl no longer cried at night. She had found peace in the life she once resisted. The old man grew weaker with each passing week. His steps slowed, his breaths shorter, yet his eyes always softened when he looked at her. One dawn, as the first light touched the wooden walls, he lay in bed, frail but calm. She sat by his side, holding his hand tightly. He spoke with effort, his voice faint. "You were once forced into this life, but you gave me more than I could ever give you. You gave me company. You gave me peace in my last days." Tears filled her eyes, but she no longer wept with sorrow. She wept with love. She whispered, "You gave me kindness when I had nothing. You gave me safety when I was afraid. You were never a stranger. You became my family." He closed his eyes, a gentle smile on his lips. His breathing slowed, then grew still. The girl pressed his hand to her face, her tears falling softly. She sat by him until the sun rose higher, the garden outside glowing with flowers they had planted together. She felt grief, but also gratitude. He had entered her life as an unwanted burden, but left it as a blessing she would carry forever. The villagers whispered when they learned of his passing. They remembered her tears on the wedding day. They could not understand the bond that had grown between them. But she knew. She carried his journal close to her heart, and every morning she tended to the garden, watching the flowers bloom, a living memory of the man who had taught her the meaning of quiet love. The girl no longer felt trapped. She felt free. She had lost him, but she had gained strength. She had learned that kindness could heal even the deepest wounds. And when she looked at the rising sun, she no longer wept. She smiled softly, knowing that his secret, his love, and his peace would remain with her always.